everyone. I wanted to thank you all for attending tonight. We really appreciate it. And so our guest speaker is an alum from Embry-Riddle here at the Prescott campus. And we are very excited to have him through the honors program with Dr. Ann Betcher, who's also the director for the Undergraduate Research Institute. And so a little background on Matt Savoca. He graduated here at Embry-Riddle, the Prescott campus, back in 1994 with an aeronautical engineering degree. After his time there, during school actually, he was the SGA president. Ooh, there we go, we have lights. So during his time here on the campus, he was the SGA president, so he was very excited to see all the flyers around campus for SGA, so go vote. Continuing on after the university, he was part of the board of trustees, and then after graduation, he was working with Honeywell for about 5 years. He met his partner there while working at Honeywell, and they decided one day, let's start a business. So they put in their time for Honeywell and ended up resigning, and they started their business out of his partner's house. And so they had their offices inside bedrooms, and they got it started. And so we are all very excited students here tonight to listen to him present on his time, on him starting Coda Technologies. Back then it was Coda, what was that? Consulting, right? And so now it's Coda Technologies, and we're all very excited. So give him a warm welcome. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Ann, too, for hosting me. I find it interesting that this is for the honors college and the honors students, and because I would never have been accepted when I was here, and so it's wonderful that I have this opportunity now, so I appreciate that. I do want to just point out Dr. Felton. Really appreciate you being here. Dr. Felton was my first professor in my first class in Building 54 when I got to Embry-Riddle. And I still remember my very first day sitting in Embry-Riddle and Dr. Felton standing up there, and he says, and it was a dynamics class, and he said, you know, I'm up here and I know all this stuff, and you guys are going to look and you're going to say, boy, this stuff seems so hard. But you know, everything's hard until you know it. And that's always stuck with me. Everything's hard until you know it. And it's true. Everything is hard until you know it. And once you know it, it's just not hard anymore. So that's always stuck with me. So it's great to see you. Thank you. All right. So this is moving a little slowly here, but here's my quick little background. I was class of 94. I was the student government president. I was actually the graduation speaker too, which was a great honor. Went to Honeywell. I was actually at Honeywell for about 7 years, and then started Coda Technologies with my business partner, Doug Limbaugh. And I'm going to get into more of that as we go along, but this is just the basics of it. We started Coda in 2001, and I still run it today. We've been acquired by a bigger company, Sierra Nevada Corporation, but we'll get into that a little bit too. So there's a few themes that are going to run through this presentation that you guys will see. I'm really just going to tell you a bunch of stories, and my slides are pretty simple, but a lot of it's just going to be me up here telling you guys stories. But the themes that run through all these stories are hard work, tenacity, and grit. Now, you know, you don't see GPA up there, you don't see brain power up there, you don't see smarts up there. Hard work, tenacity, and grit. If you give me someone that works hard, is tenacious in what they do, and has some grit to them, you know, when something comes up and there's a problem, they can handle it. They don't stress out, they know how to handle things. I don't care what their degree is, I don't care what their GPA is, they got a job with me. So that sort of describes a lot of what I've been through in my life, what I look for in people I hire. Now, you got to have a decent GPA, don't get me wrong, but you need to work hard, you need to have tenacity, and you need a little grit to you too. All right, here's my story time. I was born in Detroit, lived there till I was about 10 years old, and then we moved to Phoenix when I was 10. My dad had a heating and cooling business in Detroit, and he would make me, as an 8-year-old kid, carry flyers and go downtown Detroit and knock on people's doors and say, would you like to have your furnace cleaned? And I had to do this all the time. So another one of my themes is knocking on doors, right? And we'll get to some of those stories too. But it was pretty interesting that as an 8-year-old kid, he would literally drop me off and come back like 4 hours later and pick me up and go, "How'd it go?" I say, "Well, no one wants their furnace cleaned, Dad." I think I might have gotten one if I was lucky. But so then we moved to Phoenix, and then when I was about 15 years old, this was the headlines in the paper. And you can see there Richard Anthony Savoca in that second line. My dad was killed when I was 15. He was. We still don't know if it was suicide, if he was killed. We don't know. We do know that it was 1982. I was 15 years old. I was a sophomore in high school. We get a knock on the door at 6 a.m. Then the police are there and said, Richard Savoca's dead. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough for our family. Now, he was not the best of guys. He was into a lot of things that came out later. But this was headlines in the paper for 3 days in Phoenix. It was on the news. And so then I got to go back to school, at high school, and walk in, and everyone says, "So that was your dad?" And I say, "Yeah, it was my dad." So things with my mom and I kind of fell apart a little bit after that. And I ended up moving out before my senior year of high school. I moved out and didn't talk to my mom for like 5 years. So I was on my own. I lived with my sister for a little while, lived with a couple other guys, and ended up at Peter Piper Pizza. This guy sitting right up here, that's one of my good friends, Dean Stafford. He used to work at Peter Piper Pizza with me too, by the way. But we actually met in high school, Dean and I did. But I became a Peter Piper Pizza guy. I became an assistant manager. I worked there till I was about 23 years old. Learned a lot of things at Peter Piper that helped me along the way in my business. I distinctly remember one time realizing that no one is indispensable. And that's something you guys got to keep in mind. I'll never forget Friday night, big rush. There's 2 positions, and Dean can attest to this. There's 2 positions at Peter Piper when you're working that are super important. The sauce and cheese guy, because he's the one that, or her, sauce and cheese woman. She's the one that will get those pizzas moving fast. Then the oven person, because they're the ones who kind of control the pizzas coming out of that oven. So you need a good sauce and cheese and oven person. Well, there was one Friday night, the sauce and cheese and oven person decided they were going to quit. So 7 o'clock, right in the middle of the rush, they walk out, "We quit." And the manager didn't panic, put me on sauce and cheese, put my friend Jim on oven, and we didn't miss a beat. And I remember thinking, man, we were all so stressed out when these 2 quit because we thought, we're never going to make it without these 2. But then I stepped up, Jim stepped up, and the manager said, "You guys were better than they were anyways. We just didn't know it until you got the opportunity." And so it really made me realize, as much as you think you're indispensable, as much as you might think that this company needs me, and listen, we do need good employees, everyone does, no one's indispensable. Someone will take your place, someone will step up, and when you get that opportunity, then be the one who steps up too. So that was just one of the kind of interesting lessons I learned there. After Peter Piper, I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I was a general manager of Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was 23 years old. I was running the store at 32nd Street in Shea. And I started looking around, and all my friends from high school, except for Dean, all my other friends were graduating college. Sorry, Dean. And my sister, my little sister, was in college and going to college, and no one in my family had gone to college before. And I was the middle child. There was 2 older and 2 younger. And I thought, wow, this is actually possible. Like, people can go to college, because she blazed the way for me. And so I remember calling up my supervisor, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go to college." I go, come down. I want to talk to you. So he comes into the office, and I said, "I'm going to go be a bartender and go to college, and so I'm going to turn in my notice." And he looks at me, and he says, "You have no idea the opportunity you're giving up here. You could be a star at Kentucky Fried Chicken." I'm like, "Thanks for the encouragement." So he got really mad at me and really said, he made a comment like, I've seen a lot of people try to go to college and fail at it and wish they'd never started. And I was like, well, I'm going to give it a go. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. And so I did. And so then I quit Kentucky Fried Chicken. I got a job at the time waiting tables and went to Paradise Valley Community College down in Phoenix for a couple of years. So I was 23 when I started college. So those of you who are not even 23 yet, you're way ahead of the game. You truly are. So at Embry-Riddle, I became a bartender. I came up here. So it was about 2 years in, so I was like 25, and I got accepted to Embry-Riddle. My friend and I came up here just to look at the campus because he wanted to be a pilot. And then I just fell in love with the campus. Again, this was 25 years ago, so none of these big buildings were here. This was all just the little huts and things. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. Found out they had a ERAU engineering program, which was for some reason what I decided I was interested in. And then applied and got accepted and came up. So one day I'm down in Phoenix and I thought, gee, school starts in 2 weeks. I need an apartment and a job. I better get up to Prescott. So I hopped, and there was no internet back then, and you kind of just had to go do things. So I hopped in my car, drive up here, and I'm driving down Gurley Street, and I'm like, there's got to be apartments somewhere, and I just kind of keep driving, and then finally came across some apartments, walked in. Guy said, yeah, I got a studio apartment, got that. And I said, is there any restaurant around so I can go, get a job? And he says, yeah, keep going around. There's the Prescott Mining Company. You old timers will remember the Prescott Mining Company. So I drive around there and I walk in and I said, could I get I'd like to, a job as a waiter? And she says, well, we really need a bartender. And I'd never bartended before, but I was like, oh yeah, I can bartend. She goes, oh, okay, great, yeah. Then when could you start? And I said, 2 weeks. She goes, okay, we'll see you then. So I get back in my truck and I realized I'd been in town about 20 minutes and I had my apartment and a job. And I went, okay, I guess I drive back to Phoenix. So I go back down to Phoenix, and the restaurant I was working in at the time had this bartender named Troy, who was a great, great guy. And I said, Troy, look, man, you got to teach me how to bartend in 2 weeks because I'm going up there and they think I'm a bartender. So he says, all right, anytime you want, come work behind the bar with me. So literally the next 2 weeks, I spent every day just watching Troy and working with Troy. He taught me all the tricks and came up here and bartended at Prescott Mining Company, and then they made me bar manager. So it's like, okay, I guess I can bartend. So that was a fun little, fun time bartending. It really was. And that leads into student government president. During my time up here, I was student government president. It's, again, like I said, I'm just going to tell a bunch of stories. So I'm going to tell you how I got elected, which is really kind of interesting, I think. So I wasn't in a fraternity. I was an older student, like I told y'all. I did bartend, so I knew a lot of the students that would try to sneak into the bar. But my buddy Russ was the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, the Horizon newspaper. And at the time, Dr. Sliwa, who was the chancellor, or the president, I guess. What was he? The president? He was the president of the university. He wanted to move the campus down to Williams Air Force Base. And so Russ, as editor-in-chief, said, hey, you need to run for student government president so that we can fight this. And we can, I'll be the editor-in-chief, you can be student government president. So I said, okay. So I'm like, how are we going to do this? He's like, I'll be your campaign manager. I said, okay, what are we going to do to get me elected here? He's like, this was all Russ's idea. I give him the credit. He's like, look, you got to go meet people because you don't know enough people. So let's go knock on the doors of every single dorm room door and introduce you. I said, okay. So we spent like 3 weekends, literally he and I, knocking on every single dorm room door. And if they weren't there, we'd write it down, we'd come back. And I introduced myself to every single student in the dorms and shook their hands, sat and talked to them for however long they wanted to talk about what was going on with the school, this whole thing with Dr. Sliwa wanting to move the campus and how we were going to fight it and all these things. So that really helped. The other thing we did was, and again, Russ's idea, he made me do it, but I printed out, there was 1,300 students at the time, so printed out a little thing about this big, just a paragraph about what I was going to do as student government president, and then hand-signed every one of them. Just sat down in my living room, 1,300 signatures, hand-signed each one, and then stuck them in everyone's mailbox at Embry-Riddle. And then they would go and they'd get their mail and they'd look and people were going, oh, I got the original. And some, no, I got the original. And people actually realized that it was my hand-signed deal. So that went over so well, we did it again. So I had 2,600 of these that I ended up signing. But bottom line is I ended up getting elected. Dr. Smith and I worked together. He was the faculty rep at the time. I was the student government president at the time, and we worked together to try to keep the campus here, which we were obviously successful because it's still here. But that was a really fun time, and it was really great working with Dr. Smith on that. I was also the graduation speaker, and that is really, truly one of the biggest honors of my life. This was voted on by the class, and for me to get nominated and then to be selected as the graduation speaker, it's a very, very big honor, and it's something that I still remember to this day. I actually remember the guy who spoke in front of me was Story Musgrave, the astronaut, and man, that guy can talk, and he has stories. And I'm sitting in the back, and he's up there talking, and I'm going, I got to follow him? This is just not right. But it was a wonderful, wonderful honor to be the graduation speaker. And my GPA was 3.00000. And the reason I put that up there is because GPA is important, and I don't want anyone to think that what I'm saying here is that GPA isn't important. GPA is very, very important. But it's not the end-all of end-alls. It just isn't. There's a lot of people that have a lot of circumstances, a lot of people who have to work their way through college, and they don't have every waking moment to spend focusing on that GPA. Some people just aren't real good at I'm not a good test taker. I'll admit it. I'm not. I mean, Dr. Felton can attest to that. I'm not a good test taker, huh? but people have other skills and they have other attributes. And so when we look at someone, when we're hiring people, I do look at GPA, but I don't put a ton of focus on it. I know that, again, mine was 3.0. I'm not the smartest guy in every room. I don't expect everyone to be the smartest guy in every room. Sometimes you want the smartest guy in the room, but sometimes you want people that have some other attributes too. So just thought I'd mention that a little bit. Okay, so after Embry-Riddle, I ended up going to Honeywell. And Hello World is just a little interesting little story again here. Those of you who program at all know that generally the first program you write is Hello World, right? So my degree was aerospace engineering. I knew nothing about computer programming, like literally nothing. I took a Fortran class and barely made my way through that, but that was it. So when I was applying for jobs, I wasn't getting any hits, and I had a good friend, Mike Landreth, who worked at Honeywell, and he said, hey, I could probably get you a job as a programmer at Honeywell working with me. And I said, okay, but I'm not a programmer. And he said, yeah, but it's a job. And I said, okay, let's do this. So he said, but you're going to have to make it through the interview. And I was like, all right. So I go and I start studying a little C and programming. And I talked to another friend of mine, Dennis. I call him Bug, so I'm going to just call him Bug here. And Bug was a programmer at the time. And he said, okay, so he teaches me Hello World, right? So I do this little program, main, Hello World. And he goes, okay, here's what you do. In your interview, when they say, how much programming have you done? Just say, well, I know a little more than Hello World. And they'll all laugh, and then you can move on. And I said, okay, I'll try that. So sure enough, I get to my interview at Honeywell, and someone says, so how much programming have you actually done? And I said, well, I know a little more than Hello World. And they all went, oh, okay, haha. And then that was the end of it. So I was like, hey, that was perfect. So I end up as a programmer at Honeywell. And so it's sort of like the bartending incident where I didn't know how to bartend. I also didn't know how to program. And I ended up studying and working hard and figuring it all out and had great mentors at Honeywell. Really learned a lot from a couple guys who took me under their wing. And ended up becoming a pretty good programmer. And then after a little while, I met my business partner, Doug, at Honeywell, and we decided, hey, let's start a consulting business to bring engineers into Honeywell. And because at the time, consulting was kind of a big business. And it was actually kind of easy. We saw a lot of people going off, start their business, coming back and being consultants, and we thought, hey, how hard can this be? We can do this. And so we initially, we were founded in June of 2001. We had a lot of good fortune along the way. We quit our jobs at Honeywell to start this business, and literally the next day, our old managers called us back and said, "Hey, do you guys want to consult back for us here at Honeywell?" And we went, "Yeah, sure." So we doubled our bill rates like the next day, and all of a sudden we had a business. And we were doing it out of the loft of his house. There was just the two of us up there. And well, you know what? I'll tell that story when I get to my next slide. But the original intent was avionics consulting. That was what we got into the business to do. We were both avionics engineers. We started doing that. We had jobs. We ended up getting a few more jobs and hiring a couple people. And when we would hire people, we'd make an office in the bedroom. And so we had like 3 guys sitting in one bedroom, and me and Doug were in the loft. And Doug's mom came over one time and cooked us all food, and his parents were trying to visit, and we said, it's time to get an office. So we ended up we got an office, and in 2006, we sold off the consulting side of the business. So we had built that up to about 40 people or so, and we had started doing what's called SBIRs, Small Business Innovation Research Grants. And these are government grants that allow you, that really tailored towards small business. They start like, I think it's $100,000 now. It was $70,000 when we were doing it. $100,000 phase 1, and then if you get to phase 2, it was $750,000. Now it's $1 million. And for a small company with a few people, you get to $750,000 or $1 million. That's work for 2 years, right? So these things were fantastic for us when we first started out, these SBIRs. And so we started doing those, and then we didn't like this consulting work anymore because it was too up and down, and it was too, we got to hire 10 people for this program and do this and this and this. So we ended up selling that off and focusing on our military work. And we ended up winning 22 of these SBIRs, transitioning most of them to phase 2s. So it is I just can't say enough about the SBIR program. They also have what's called STTRs, which is for businesses to work with universities. And so that's something that we should probably talk about a little bit. Most of our business is unmanned vehicle control. So our very first SBIR ever in 2003 was to build a UAV controller on a PDA, a Dell PDA, because this was kind of before the cell phones were as ubiquitous as they are now. And so that SBIR started back then. That is still an active SBIR today. So that is how long these contracts can go when you get the right contracts, you do them the right way, and you have a good customer. So that's the majority, again, of our work. We've got about 60 employees, and 40 of them probably do unmanned vehicle control work. We have some other things we do too, but that's the majority of it. And then in 2015, we were acquired by Sierra Nevada Corporation, not the beer. This is the aviation company. Sierra Nevada is an amazing company. They do a couple $2 billion a year in sales, and they're still owned by a husband and wife. And they make all the decisions still. They run the business. They're involved every day. Great people, and it's just been a great marriage for us, for Sierra Nevada Corporation. And most Army UAVs are controlled in one way or another by some of our software. We control the large UAVs, we control the small UAVs. We're writing software now for what they call the short-range reconnaissance, which are the quad rotors that they're going to be putting out into the field. So it's been, we touch a whole lot of UAVs, and actually I think I have this slide here. Yeah, these are the UAS that we control. So there's a whole bunch of them on there you can see. Some of these are private company ones. Some of these are military ones. You can see we even unmanned the Sikorsky Blackhawk. We flew a mission with them by tapping into their autopilot system. The K-MAX, Lockheed Martin, and Little Bird Boeing, all those are 3 very, very big helicopters that we ended up unmanning for them. And then you see a little picture of our software down here too. Okay, so that's a little about the company, a little about me. How much time do I got? Okay, good. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some heuristics and just some lessons that I've learned along the way. Just share some things with you. This is the definition of a heuristic in case people don't quite know what it is. Just, I think I got a little knowledge up in here and been through a few things, so just wanted to share some of those with you. All right. So the first one, make a decision, okay? A lot of times people get so caught up in what we call analysis paralysis, where you just can't decide whether to do this or to do that, and you talk about it and you hold a meeting and you do this and you do that. It's like, make a decision. It's a lot easier. You make a decision. If it's wrong, you can correct it, and you can then go the other way. If you never make a decision, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to be stuck in the mud. So this is a big one. There's a lot of people, you will not believe how many people just can't make a decision. So make a decision. All right. Listen. I don't mean hear, I mean listen. So when someone's talking to you, when you're in a conversation, really, really listen to what they're saying. So there's a couple different ways when you're having a conversation with someone, a couple different ways it can go, right? One, you can listen and you can say, that's interesting, Ann. Tell me more, right? Ask a few questions. Talk to me. Let me hear. I want to hear what you have to say. And then there's the other way where you say, you start to do this because you got a story you want to tell, and you can't wait for this guy to finish because you want to kind of one-up him on your story. And then they say, oh yeah, well I went to the Grand Canyon yesterday or last week, and you go, oh, well, I went to Italy, and it's like you're not letting them tell their story. So when you're talking to someone, listen and let them tell their story to you. They want to be heard, so let them be heard. And it will go a long way in the workplace. When you're in the workplace and you're listening to someone and you're asking them questions, you're learning. And when you're talking, you're just not learning. You're giving information, whether it's good information or bad information, but you're not learning, and you need to learn. So listening is a very, very important skill to make sure you have. Be on time. Be on time. No one wants to hear the traffic was bad. No one cares. No one cares. People want you there on time. And I don't just mean for an interview, right? Because everyone's on time for an interview. Well, everything's an interview, okay? Everything's an interview. When you don't be the guy or the girl who, you're on a business trip and everyone's like waiting down in the lobby and it's like, oh, we got a plane to catch and oh, someone better go knock on Matt's door because he's not going to be down here. You don't want that reputation. Be on time. And, this whole 5 minute early is on time thing. I mean, we've all heard that before. But I tell our people, listen, when we have a teleconference, you guys dial in 5 minutes ahead of time. I want, when the Army joins or our customers join, we need to be on the line already. And we do that. That's not necessarily a company policy, but it's something that we strive to do. Be on time. Very, very important. All right, so this is a little Donald Rumsfeld saying up top and Steve Jobs below, but A's hire A's and B's hire C's. I really like that expression from Rumsfeld. So when you're an A person, you want to work with other A people. You want to work with people who are good. They don't threaten you, right? When you're a B person, you want to work with C's. Because you want to feel like, oh, no, I can't have someone smarter than me or more charismatic than me or who's going to threaten me. And so you can really tell a lot by a company and by a manager, by the people they surround themselves by. A people are always going to want to work with A people. They're not going to accept Bs. B people will always want to work with C people. And even in hiring, when I hire someone, if I feel like I'm smarter than them, that's a problem. I mean, I don't want to be the smart one. I want them to be the smart one. And so we have done a fantastic job, I believe, in our company of hiring very, very, very good people and keeping them, because we want that. We want to work with A's. We don't want to work with B's or C's. Now, sometimes you can turn a B into an A, but you don't want to try to turn a C into a B. All right, business plans. Let's talk a little. Is anyone here taking business classes? Okay, do you talk about business plans? Yeah? Okay, all right. And so, and again, this is kind of like the GPA thing. I don't want to say business plans, don't do a business plan. This is not what I'm saying, so I want to get that out of the way first. But this kind of goes back to that analysis paralysis sometimes too. So I know a guy who was trying to start a business, and he'd been trying, and we had been pretty successful, so he asked if we could go to lunch and talk and, get a little advice. So we were out there, and he says, okay, so I've got my 10-page business plan, I've got my 50-page business plan, and I've got my 150-page business plan, and when I go to visit investors, I take the 100-page one, and when I go to conferences, I take the 150-page one, and when I'm just talking to people, I give the 10-page one. He's like, what was your business plan like? And I was like, I didn't have a business plan, right? We just kind of did it. And so now, again, I'm not advocating not having a business plan, but what I'm saying is this. Let's take a lawn mowing business. Let's say you're going to start a lawn mowing business. There's a couple ways you could do it. You could do what my friend did and write yourself your 10-page business plan, your 100-page business plan, your 150-page business plan, and you could analyze all the competitors, and you can figure out what everyone's charging, and you can do neighborhood, analyze the neighborhood and who just moved in and who didn't move in and who's been here a long time, and you can go through all these things, and maybe you come up with the decision that I'm going to start a lawn mowing business, and maybe that's right, and maybe it's wrong. You don't necessarily know, right? Or maybe you say, I'm not going to, and again, maybe you should have. But another way to do it is you could go knock on 100 doors. Here's the knocking on doors thing again. And say, hey, my name's Matt. I'd like to mow your lawn for free this weekend. And if you like it, I'd like to be your permanent lawn person. And if you don't, hey, no worries at all. It's a freebie. And if they may say yes, they may say no, right? So you do that to 100 houses. If you get 10 yeses, you got a business. And if you get 100 no's, then it's probably not the best way to go. So you can get out there and you can do things, and you can actually go to customers directly and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think this is a good idea? Is this something you need? Instead of, now again, you need to understand the situation, you need to understand competitors, but you don't need to get so wrapped up in it that you just can't make a decision on it. So that's business plan. Is that what they said about business plans in your class? Okay. All right, so when to start a business? You hear that a lot, right? People say, well, when should I start this business? Because when you're new in something, it's really, really difficult, right? Because you don't know enough necessarily. And then, it'd be easier if you're older and you have a little money. And that, because now you're not going to have to go into debt and do all these things. I have found, I started my business when I was 35-ish. I had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I had no money, like literally no money. I took a $20,000 home equity loan out just so that I'd have a little money, spending money, while we were getting the business going. But, it's a little cliche, but when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose, right? I mean, it's a lot easier, I believe, to say, I'm going to take this chance, and if I fail, well, okay, it's not like I have all this money to invest. I've just got to give it a go, and if I fail, I'll go back and work at Honeywell. And that was what I told my wife a lot. And by the way, it's very important to have a supportive spouse when you're going to start a business. Luckily, I had a very supportive spouse because I couldn't have done it without her. But I think today, if I was going to start my same business, I wouldn't do it. I think I know too much. I think I would look and I'd say, well, wow, that's way too risky. There's no way I'm going to do that. And when you do have something to lose, you're a little more cautious, right? Because it's like, I've worked all this time to have something, and now I don't want to lose it. And so you don't take the chances maybe that you would take. You're not as hungry as you would be when you really don't have much because you really want to build something. So my advice is, there's never the perfect time to start a business. And it's the same thing for having children. There's never a perfect time to have kids. People go, I want to wait till I'm in my mid-30s. There's never a perfect time. There's never a perfect time to go to college, right? I was 23, graduated at 29. So when you want to do something, do it. Do it. Give it a go. Give it a go. Even if you think it's risky, give it a go. All right. On the shoulders of giants. If I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, this is Isaac Newton's credited with this, but saying's been around for a while. Really, what it means is people have come before you, and not just in industry, but in your life, your family, your parents, your siblings. These are all people that you're standing on their shoulders, right? These people have all influenced you in one way or another. And people in industry also. I graduated with a guy, Ralph, just talking with Dr. Smith about Ralph. He does games for iPhones, right? Smartest guy in our class, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. His whole business is developing these games now. But he wouldn't have a platform if there was no iPhone, right? I mean, people have come before him and they have built, and he's building on what other people have done. And we all do that in our careers, right? Everyone builds on what people have done before us. And so you really want to just keep that in mind, that as great as you do, there's always someone before you who helped boost you up. And I got to take a quick drink of my water here. This is a big bottle of water. Okay. Understand and appreciate luck. So there's a lot of people, and I've had this discussion with a few, who say, it's just hard work, hard work. Go, you got to work hard. And that's true. There's no successful person who doesn't work hard. That's very, very true. There's a lot of people that work hard who just aren't super successful either, though. And there are times in your life where luck is going to shine on you, and there's times when it's not. Just the way it is. And when you think about it, drive down the street, and you know what? If you would have turned right, maybe you would have had an accident, and you just don't even know it. But you happened to go straight, and you didn't. And you're alive today because you never took a turn that you don't even know about. And that's luck, right? And this happens all the time in your life, too. In your career, it happens. In your life, it happens. One of the things that I was going to touch on earlier, when Doug and I started the business, we were working at Honeywell. We somehow, they just said, hey, work back at Honeywell. And we did, and we started billing them. But we weren't on any supplier list. So we were getting these checks from Honeywell, and we were working, and all of a sudden we get a call after about 3 months, and they said, hey, you're not on the approved Honeywell supplier list. You can't do this. You got to stop. We can't pay you. And so we said, well, wait, hold on. How do we get on that list? And they said, oh, well, you need all these paperwork filled out and all these forms. You need all these processes and you need all this stuff. And we're like, well, okay, we can do that. And they said, well, yeah, but you're going to be evaluated in a week. And we're in Doug's house still in the loft of his apartment. We said, okay, just tell us what we need. So they sent us a list, a stack of papers like this to fill out. You need a new hire process, and you need a software development process, and you need this process, and you need that process, all these things. So we sat down, and I said, okay, Doug, I'll take this one, you take that one. And we just started just making up just a bunch of stuff, right? And we just typed it out. Okay, I got that one. So we come up with this just honestly, just nothing. but they were there, right? So it's time for the evaluation. And we're stressed out because we're like, man, whoever shows up, they're going to say, first of all, you're in a loft. This isn't a business. You're in the loft of a house. And these are your processes? Like, come on, this isn't a real business. And so sure enough, knock on the door and we open it, and it's this lady, Amy, who Doug and I were both really good friends with, right? That was luck. That was luck that Amy showed up at that door and not some guy who was trying to make a point and not someone that we didn't know, because she walked up in there and she's like, oh yeah, so you guys are small. This is so cool. You guys got this business going and she starts looking through our processes. She goes, oh, okay, well, I know you're just small and just getting started. This is okay, this is okay, this is okay. And 2 hours later she left and we were on the Honeywell supplier list. So if she doesn't come to that door, I don't think I'm here today talking to you about this business, because we probably would have had to close up shop. So hi, welcome. How are you? Oh, no, that's okay. Just glad you made it, because we need a couple more. So yeah, just really in your life, just understand, right, that I like to go, yeah, we worked hard and we did this and we did that and we did that, but I'd be back at Honeywell working as an engineer again if Amy hadn't showed up at the door. I can count 3 or 4 times easily where we would have been out of business if something wouldn't happen one way or another. The other thing is our first SBIR that I talked about, that on the PDA, the UAV controller on the PDA, there was 26 companies that put in for that, and they selected 2. We didn't know anyone at the Army. We had no connections. We hadn't talked to anyone. We wrote a dang good proposal, but there was probably 24 other really good proposals too that didn't get selected, and we did. And we don't get selected there. We still maybe have a business, but we're not controlling all the Army UAVs at this point. We're doing something totally different. So again, a little bit of luck involved there. All right, 4-minute mile. So 1956, I think it was, if I remember right, Roger Bannister runs a 4-minute mile. First guy to ever do it. People have been trying for years and years and years and years and years and years to break this 4-minute barrier. No one could do it. So finally, he does it, right? By 1960, 23 people had done it. So did the training suddenly get better, right? What happened? Well, what happened was it was a mental barrier. And someone broke it, and people went, well, wait a minute, if he can do it, I can do it, right? And so then they pushed just that little bit harder, and before you know it now, 4-minute mile, there's been 1,600 people or so that have run a 4-minute mile. But until he did it, everyone thought it was impossible. And so the lesson there is just don't think things are impossible, because they're not. Just because no one's done it before doesn't mean that it can't be done. And as soon as you do it or someone else does it, everyone's going to follow. Everyone's going to follow. Look at the phones, right? Look at iPhones and Samsungs and everything. Everyone's got a phone today. But when I was here on this campus, there was no cell phones. We did not have it sounds so weird, but there were no cell phones. There wasn't even the internet. So things change quickly. But just don't think things are impossible just because they haven't been done. All right, last one. This is my last slide. How am I doing on time? Hey, this worked out pretty good. All right, Sistine Chapel. So one of my favorite movies is Good Will Hunting. I don't know if you guys have seen Good Will Hunting. If you haven't, you should see it. It's a great, great movie, okay? And in that movie, Matt Damon's character is this brilliant, brilliant kid from Boston, kind of a street kid, but super brilliant. He starts sneaking into MIT and solving equations on the board at night and that sort of thing. And pretty much knows everything about everything. Very, very well-read, photographic type memory, super smart guy. And his counselor was Robin Williams. And Robin Williams is talking to him one day, and he says, you just think you know everything about everything, don't you? If I ask you about this, you're going to tell me who invented it and how long it's been around. And if I ask you about this, you're going to tell me everything I ever need to know about it. But do you know what it smells like inside the Sistine Chapel? And, I just love that line. Do you know what it smells like inside the Sistine Chapel? Because unless you've been in there, you can know everything. You could see the pictures. You're not going to know what it smells like inside there. So It's one thing to have a lot of book knowledge. It's one thing to understand things in books. It's one thing to read about them. It's one thing to be very well read. But go do things. Get out there, explore, live your life. Go to Europe. Go see the world. Get to meet new people, see new cultures, and go smell the inside of the Sistine Chapel. It smells pretty good. It's nice. And I need a drink. Actually, a beer, but. All right. So that's my presentation. So thank you all. I appreciate it. And all right. And so I guess I still got about 10 minutes if anyone's got questions or wants to talk or say anything. Yes.
I actually read the Francis paper now, so I'm going to quote you on this if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
What would you say is the best motivation for someone who wants to start a small business if you were going to give them one piece of advice? What would you say?
The best motivation?
A piece of advice or something you would give someone who wants to start a small business?
Okay. I would say, first of all, be ready for a grind. Be ready. Don't go into it halfway. If you're going to do it, it is going to take 100% of everything you have. It truly, truly is. And you can't just, those aren't just words. I mean, it truly needs to be your life for a long time. You need to commit to it. And you need to do something that you're good at and that you like. And I know that sounds simple, but if you don't like what you do, then it's just not worth it. But yeah, it's really a mental commitment is truly, I think, the biggest piece. You really got to commit. Yeah.
Regarding your SBIR proposal writing,
You're right.
how did you get experience with that? Writing proposals, like how many did you write before you actually got them accepted?
Okay, that's a good question. So we wrote like 3, I think, and we didn't get any of them accepted. And then, and at the time, we were just kind of throwing things against the wall and just trying to get some work in the door. So we were ERAU engineers, both Doug and I, but we were still writing whatever proposals we could. But the city of Phoenix actually had a program where they give you $5,000 to hire a writer to help you. And that was our turning point, really, because we were engineers, and it's hard for an engineer to write a kind of marketing proposal. And this guy, Randy Grimes was his name, he really, really helped us. He came in and he looked at some of our old proposals, and he was like, guys, this is an engineering document. This isn't a marketing proposal. So he taught us about, how to make things look pretty and put a picture up here and do this and do that and make, how to word things where it wasn't so engineering and it was more marketing. And that was the first one we won, that PDA controller. That was the one he helped us with. And so that was, I think, our 4th one. And after that, every quarter they would come out, and we'd probably submit 2 or 3 every quarter. And, like I said, we ended up winning 22 of them using that same template that he gave us. So we give him a lot of credit. We still occasionally touch base with him and see if he wants a job, but he's off doing something else. But yeah, that was a difficult thing for us, and it's hard for a lot of engineers to know how to write. So we ask that in interviews a lot. Do you like to write, and are you a good writer? Because if you can write proposals, that's a big deal for people. Sure. Anyone? Yep.
What's the composition of the company now?
So we've got about 60 people total in the company. I think about 45 engineers. So, and there's a lot of contractors and some interns and that, but we've got a few business development people, some admins. We're pretty lean, really. We don't have a whole lot of overhead. We like to keep it that way, and we're pretty flat. We don't have a program manager to this person to this person to this person to an engineer. It's Doug and me, and then it's program managers, and then it's engineers. So about 45 engineers. Yeah.
So what drove you to start your business? Was it the fact that were you just itching to do something that Honeywell wasn't nimble enough to do, or is it something you always
Right.
all in,
Right.
there has to be something that's either sparked you or inside you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was, my dad had always had his own business. He had his heating and cooling company back in Michigan, and then he had his own real estate company out here. And I always saw that it was possible to do. So I wasn't super intimidated by the idea of doing it. And really, one silly story that I tell sometimes too is it kind of bothered me that my friend got me my job at Honeywell. And I was like, I want to do something on my own, because I felt like, this whole career at Honeywell was, I don't want to say handed to me, but it was sort of was, they would have never hired me without him. So that was one thing. The other thing was I felt like I didn't want my future controlled by a decision made by someone else. So I felt like if at any time someone at Honeywell could go, oh, we need to lay off 20% of our engineering staff and I'm out of a job. So when I looked at it that way, I sort of felt like that was almost the riskier take, because I felt like if I was going to do it, I was going to be successful. I just felt that way, I guess. So it was really more like me wanting to control my own destiny than have someone else control it. Is probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
So, first of all, I want to apologize that I had to leave after this because I'm actually running for SBA too. That's something that's huge.
Congratulations. Good luck.
But on that note, as someone who would hire an engineer, would it look more appealing if they had experience in SGA or leadership in a STEM-focused club?
I don't think it matters. I mean, honestly, what matters is that you're involved doing something, and that you're doing more than just your studies. If you're in a STEM-focused club, great. If you're in student government, great. If you're on the basketball team, great, right? I mean, to me, and it really what matters is how you present yourself, and how you come across to your future employer. And I told someone earlier in the day that I'll always look over a resume before an interview, but I will generally know when I shake someone's hand in the lobby if I'm going to hire them or not. Like, truly. You get a sense of someone, we all do that, right? We make those judgments, and I'm the worst and the best at it. I mean, I make those judgments like that. So I think the key is to be involved and do things, and whether it's student government or whether it's STEM, don't worry so much about that. Do what you like, and learn as much as you can, and it'll all come through. And what are you running for, by the way?
I'm running for treasurer right now, and freshman senior year sophomore. In the future, if everything goes well, I'm running for president.
Go knock on those doors. Go knock on those dorm room doors. It works. There was 2 others, and the crazy thing is, I ended up doubling the vote total of both of them added together, which blew it away. Yeah, it was really crazy. It really, really was. And it's all, look, I mean, I give Russ, I hope Russ sees this someday. I give him a lot of credit, because he was my campaign manager, and he would say, let's go, we're going to knock on doors, let's go. And it was nice too that he was editor-in-chief of the newspaper, so he would write all these good columns about me. So that worked out well too. Really?
Safety doesn't want us to hand them out and have the students litter them.
See, we made table tents for all the tables in the cafeteria. Just do it. What are they going to make them throw them away and then put them up again? Oh, sorry, I can't see. Oh, yeah, hi.
What is your favorite memory of living in Prescott that doesn't involve the university?
Okay. Well, I absolutely loved bartending. I worked at the Prescott Mining Company. I worked at the Gurley Street Grill when it first opened, back when it was actually hopping and happening. And then I worked at Billy's Western Bar on the Row, which is Now it's at 1881, I think they call it. It was Moctezuma's for a while. I forget all the names it's been through. But really, I just really enjoy the locals, and I enjoyed bartending. Here's a funny story. My son was born when I was up here. I graduated December of '94. So he was born in June of '94. So it was over that summer. And I was taking wind tunnel with Dr. Felton over the summer. And so we had our wind tunnel final coming up on Friday, and my wife goes into labor. I'm like, oh man, I gotta. And this isn't all school, by the way, because there's a funny story here on the back end. So I call up Dr. Felton and I said, look, my wife's going into labor and I'm going to have a kid, but I'm going to miss this wind tunnel final. And he wasn't super happy about it at the time. He was like, well, okay, Matt, I'll see what I can do, you know. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to miss it. So we go in Friday. She's in labor for 2 days, and we end up having the baby on Sunday morning. And Dr. Felton was very kind about it, though, so I still appreciate that. Thank you with my grade. But the funny thing was I was starting a job at Billy's Western Bar, and I got that job Wednesday. And Billy, when he hired me, he said, listen, you have to be here Sunday from 1 to 6. He goes, that's going to be your first shift. I have no one else to cover. You have to be here. And I said, Billy, I'll be here. I guarantee I'll be here. He says, okay. So we're going to labor. My wife's in labor Friday, labor all day Saturday. Sunday morning rolls around, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got to work at 1 o'clock here, and I got to have a kid, right? So they say, well, we're going to induce her, and then we'll induce her at 8 a.m. I said, okay. So they induce her, and then by 10:30, she has the baby, and the whole time I'm just stressed out. I'm like, God, this thing's got to come quick. So finally Jordan comes, and I cry and I lose it because we're so tired because we've been up for days trying to have this kid. And so I'm holding him and I'm like, honey, I got to go to work. She says, okay. So I zip home and I shower and I drive to Billy's and I get in there, and it's 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. It's kind of the alcoholics in there drinking their scotches, and a couple of old guys with their cowboy hats on, and I walk in and I'm like, I just had a kid, and they're like, hey, that's great, awesome. So that's just a really fun memory of me running over to back to work right after my kid was born. So, what's that? Oh, you bet. Anyone else? Yeah.
Where'd you come up with Kutta?
All right, so Kutta's the mathematician that some of you may have heard of and some may not. What's that? Runge Kutta, that's right. So Doug and I, when we were trying to come up with a name for the business, it's one of the hardest things we did. We just could not figure out a name for this darn business. And we thought about Savoca Limbaugh and then Limbaugh Savoca, but we could never figure out whose name should go first. So we kind of forgot about that. We really couldn't figure it out. We thought long and hard. So one day we're having a beer, eating some Thai food, and Doug just looks up and goes, Kutta Consulting. That's got a good ring to it. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Kutta Consulting. So we kind of kicked it around a little bit and then just said, okay, that's what we're going to call it. So it was really just a epiphany he had over Thai food one day, and we changed it to Kutta Technologies after we got into more government work, because the consulting isn't the best name for government work generally. But yeah, that was really it. And we wanted something simple. We wanted something easy. We didn't want something complicated. That seemed to, scratch all the itches there. So, beer and Thai food. Yes.
So you probably have been outgoing for a long time. I mean, if you started knocking on doors at 8, you had a lot of practice.
Yes.
A lot of, especially the engineering students, don't necessarily have that practice being outgoing. When you hire someone, you want them to be able to interface with the customer. What do you do to mentor them? How do you help them get beyond the introverted kind of engineering self so that they can actually interact with the customer? Do you do anything to help them?
We generally hire people that are a little more on the outgoing side, just as a general rule. I mean, it's not something we consciously necessarily look for, but I think since I do a lot of the hiring, I'm drawn to people like that. And so we don't really have any programs or anything about that, but we do express to people how important it is, how customer relationships are very, very important. And we don't let everyone talk to customers either, right? There's some people where it's like, you stay home on this trip and you come. But we got a new guy working for us, this kid Anthony, who he was a Chick-fil-A guy. He worked at Chick-fil-A for years, right? And years he worked there, and he graduated, and he continued to work there even after he graduated. And it was like December, so he'd been out for 8 months or something, and he decided to start looking, and he just couldn't find a job, and someone at work knew him through some channel, so we interview him. And I mean, I clicked with him like that. I'm just like, wow, this is the kind of guy we want to hire here. And sure enough, he's just worked out great for us. And I think some of that might have to do with the whole fast food background. I don't know, but we have a lot of people that have those sorts of backgrounds, and that we don't necessarily always hire the 4.0 students. We look 3.0 to 3.4 is kind of our sweet spot, right in there. And I think there's something to that, where it's people that have had to get out, and generally people, at least in my opinion, people that have worked and people that do, and whether it's a campus job or whether it's in student activities or whatever, that stuff counts too. When you're doing those things, you have to interact with people, and those are the people that we generally look for. So, yes.
So you mentioned heuristics, and the way you speak says that you have an intuitive feel and you rely on intuition.
Yes.
Yet that's something that you can't teach.
Right.
It's something that you observe and follow and feel.
Yes.
So tell us about intuition.
Right. Well, that's interesting you say that, because my partner Doug is similar, right? And so it's been good for us that we have done a lot on instinct, right? Where we just feel like this is the right thing to do. And so it has helped us to be able to make decisions. It's helped us to not spend too much time, running through cycle after cycle after cycle, trying to figure out. I feel like generally when we sit down, if we both agree on something, it's probably the right decision to make. And you're right, instinct has played a large role in what we do. And it plays a large role, like I just said too, in the hiring, right? Where I literally look at someone and go, this is a guy I could work with or not. And whether I know much about him or not, you kind of get a sense for it. But yeah, that's a very important point, because a lot of people get wrapped around the axle on a lot of things, and if you don't have those instincts to be able to make a good decision, it's going to be tough. So that's right, absolutely. Yes.
Now you're a business owner, a businessman. Have you ever considered taking Dr. Bigham's spot as the honors professor, as she has to leave this year?
Oh.
Her orders are sending her elsewhere.
Oh. Yeah.
There's an open spot for a leadership honors.
All right, I'm in. Are you really moving on?
I am.
Oh, where are you going?
Well, I'm going to stand up a joint task force for the 107th Tap going out of Battle Creek, Michigan.
Nice. Battle Creek, isn't that where they make Kellogg's cereal? I think it is. Yes, the Kellogg's plant is there, I believe. That's right. I have thought about getting into teaching at some point. Maybe if a business class opens up. I couldn't teach a technical class here. No way. All right. I'll look into it. All right. Anyone else? Dean, you good? All right. Yes, Dr. Felton.
I want to make a comment. Your slide that started with hard work and ended with grit is a great slide. That tells it all. You put in the hard work. started at 8 years of age, out there and by yourself in the city for all those hours. So you've been there.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I have always looked up and admired you, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Since so many teenagers and like young people, they're starting businesses today, small businesses, big businesses. What do you think they're doing wrong?
Boy. That's a tough one. You know, I don't know if it's a commitment thing. You know, I don't know. Because honestly, I don't really track why people fail that much. But people do fail when they try to start businesses, and it may be a commitment thing, you know, and it may be some luck thing too. I mean, look, every business isn't going to succeed, and it doesn't mean, and you know, it's just that old cliche thing. But you know, if you fail, it doesn't mean you have failed. It means, you know, try again. And if you're not failing, you're probably not trying enough, because we have failed a lot. I mean, there's been times we've gone off on tangents and projects and just it was wrong, and you fail, but if you don't do those, you're not going to do the right things either and succeed. So, you know, I would say just they should keep trying. If they got the itch, they should keep trying and try something different. But I know that's not a great answer. I'm sorry. Anyone else? You all good? All right. Okay. All right. Oh, yes.
What year did you graduate?
94. Yeah. What's that? December of 94. That's right.
After you walked away today, me and Madison tried looking for your name on the plaque in the SJ office.
Oh, yeah?
Couldn't find it, so 94, I'll take a look.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if I'm on the plaque. Is there a plaque of all the... Oh, really? Well, dang. That's awesome. Yeah, I know they recorded my my graduation speech, and it was in some library somewhere at one point, and I remember watching it, and I went, "Wow, it wasn't the greatest speech in the world." What's that?
What year?
94.
We have it.
Do you?
We have it.
Oh gosh.
Back in 1966.
Seriously? All right. Okay. So. Oh yeah. Can you send my graduation speech? Oh, that's cool. Oh boy. All right. 94. It was December 94.
December 94.
Right. All right. Well, that should be interesting. I had a little more hair back then. Just a little. All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.